Hi, welcome to Shaman Sisters Sessions. This is episode 145, Ancestral Healing, Connection, and Honoring. I'm Katherine Bird. I'm here with Michelle Hawk, and 'tis the season for connecting with your ancestors, which is always the season, in my opinion. But this is often the time of year that we are putting some extra attention into our ancestral connections, and it's especially important for us, I think, as Western people, as white-skinned people especially, that we make the effort to connect with our ancestors. It's something that we've been told that isn't for us or isn't part of our practice or isn't part of what we do. And this is really important in my view as a reclamation to be doing this work. And because we haven't been doing it, a lot of us are lost and we don't know what we're doing. And we might look at other people culturally who have sustained these practices and either want to just kind of copy what they're doing or don't really understand what they're doing or kind of feel left out. So here we are to discuss with you, how do we connect with our ancestors? What are some simple tools and practices that you can bring in right now, today, tomorrow, to help you to develop your ancestral work? Hi,
hmm
Michelle. How are you doing?
Hi, Kat. I'm good. And I mean, to what you said about we think that, I forget exactly what words you used, but like it's just straight up not true that our people did not work with the ancestors. Like everybody's people worked with the ancestors. That's like a thing that is ubiquitous to all of humanity ever. And, maybe it's just been a while since your particular lineage has really emphasized this practice. But regardless, you have ancestors and it is your birthright to connect with them. So absolutely, let's drop in. This is
Yeah,
something, go ahead.
sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
This is something that at my upcoming Foundations of Shamanism course that starts here pretty soon, November 17. And, this is something that we talk about of healing and reclaiming our collective indigeneity and really rooting into, regardless of where your ancestors came from, they were indigenous to somewhere and they came from Earth. And particularly in the modern Western world, particularly in the United States, we are by and large a population of immigrants, descendants of immigrants and colonizers and refugees, people who came here against their will. We have a tremendously, the vast majority of our population in the United States, our ancestors came from different lands. And so there's this field of separation that we're collectively living in, regardless of the personal relationship that you have to your ancestors. There's this collective distortion and separation fields, and people, living on lands that may be different from where their ancestors lived, and may be different even from the lands that they were born on. And so, ancestral reclamation is it's both deeply personal for you and your relationship that you have to your lineage. It's also profoundly collective based on the field that we're living in and the relationship and the perspective that our larger community has to lineage and to history and to the our human origins. But it's also Gaian. It's also part of our relationship to being living in earth bodies and being in relationship with the earth. So I want to introduce that element of, yes, it's personal and we can work with it as, me, my grandmother, my great grandfather, and also it's collective and also it's part of our Gaian birthright.
Yeah. And if ancestral work feels intimidating, you feel scared of it, you might feel like, oh, there uncomfortable feelings around it or sensations. Please remember that we are very immersed in a Christian society here, and that there are a lot of Christians and Christian teachings that connecting with your own ancestors is demonic.
Mhm.
These are the words that are being used. So it's very scary propaganda out there to keep you from connecting to your ancestors. And I always when I hear like scary propaganda around something, it's like, well, why wouldn't you want me to have that connection, that power, uh, that love moving through me? What are you, institution that is trying to control my behavior, thoughts, and way of being? What are you getting out of me not having a connection to my ancestors? And if you're getting something out of me not having a connection to my ancestors, maybe there's something I could get out of having a connection with my ancestors. So it's understandable if it feels uncomfortable. So just be aware that you might feel lost, or you might feel actually, like, oh, this might be dangerous for me because of this propaganda that's been going on.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, that's a big one. I also just want to invite people to apply that to every other thing that institutions are telling us not to do or making us feel scared about, because yeah, that's under the surface there. I also want to like bring in the piece around judgment too, and judgment, or perhaps like the rejection of connecting with our ancestry for those of us who are the descendants of people who are colonizers. And regardless of who landed where, when, on what boat, there's this like really prevalent history in European people moving around and taking over lands and causing a lot of problems and killing a lot of people. And like that's just a thing. And of course, it's not only Europeans, there's other people who did that too. But like, people have a history of being behaving horribly, you know. And so there's this the modern perspective that we have, and as we're in this really deep collective healing experience here again in the modern Western world, there's a lot of reckoning with that, and there's a lot of reckoning with the harm caused by our ancestors. And I think it's really important to be in the both and of that. Yes, acknowledging the harm caused. Yes, acknowledging the very real suffering of millions and millions of people at the hands of people who were causing that harm. It's a yes, that was real, that happened, and it still is playing out today, and still has ripple effects, and is still seen in the structures and the systems in our society. Yes, and the vast majority of people who have lived and walked this earth, there are well intentioned, well ancestors, healed ancestors in every lineage. There are magical ancestors in every lineage. There are the benevolent, loving, kind ancestors in every lineage. So do not throw the baby out with the bathwater. I had this conversation with a client recently who has or had historically been very resistant to ancestral work because in their childhood there was, they grew up in a very troubled home and reckoned with a lot of abuse as a child, and felt really like they couldn't get far enough away from their blood family and the blood family members who they knew personally. And also, as a result, were holding their ancestral connections at arm's length, or didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. And we talked about, hey, as a magical person, like this didn't come from nowhere. It's still your birthright to connect with your ancestors, and not all of them are horrible. So we did a journey work to connect with a well ancestor, and asked for a well ancestor representative to come connect with my client. And it was a very beautiful, very healing, very profound experience of opening and recognizing, oh yeah, I have well ancestors in my lineage. I have those loving, kind people in my lineage too. And they received the presence of a well ancestor that was a healing balm to the soul. And it has opened the door for this really deep and profound, not only magical lineage work and ancestral work, but also magical consciousness work in working with the gifts.
Yeah, and
Judgment.
especially if yeah, so suspend some judgment on your ancestors a little bit, that they are all bad because of maybe your family of origin. And to be able to connect, especially if you're going to be doing ancestral work, where you are seeking to heal the lineage and to maybe even help some of these ancestors who maybe weren't the best, actually, people, to help to relieve them of their suffering that might still be experiencing. You want to onboard those beneficial, good ancestors at the top of the game, right? You don't want to just go trouncing into my most pained and suffering ancestors and, start calling up the ones that are going to be arguing with you all the time over what you're trying to even accomplish in your life. But you want to bring those beneficial, loving, good ancestors forward so that you can, if you are going to kind of dig in a little bit deeper into some deeper other healing in your lineage, that you have that support, care, and experience working with your beneficial ancestors. And of that same regard, you might not know who your ancestors are. And there are also ancestors, there are ancestors of the land where you live that you can speak to and start to form relationships with. There are the ancestors of your lineages, your spiritual lineages. So you can imagine a teacher that you've had, maybe even in real life teacher who has passed on, is now an ancestor of that lineage that you were studying. And their teachers are ancestors of the lineage that you're studying, and so on. And so that is also another way that you can dip into ancestral work and start to work with beneficial ancestors and start to kind of flush out what this means to you, because it is your personal practice that you're developing.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. I love that you brought that in, the ancestors of the lands and of our spiritual lineages. And I would also say our ancestors can be our non-human relations as well. So I'm actually wearing a piece of woolly mammoth bone right now. This rose, I don't know if you can see it. It's a carved rose of woolly mammoth bone, and they're our ancestors. They walked the earth many, many, many eons ago, and the records of their bones are still held in the ice in places, and that's a very profound practice to be an honoring of all of the Gaian ancients.
And in many traditions, the rocks are our ancestors. They are the ancient ones of the earth, and they are our ancestors. And so if this all sounds troubling or difficult in any kind of way, start to just consider, as you're out walking and you're looking at the earth and you see the rocks, maybe you see some large rock formations, or you start to see these rocks, just to start to have that relationship with them, that they are
Mm-hmm.
the ancestors, that they hold so much wisdom, that you can start to communicate with them and start to speak to them as your ancestors, because they are your ancestors. We are made up of the earth, and the earth is part of us. And this is another way that you can develop this practice without getting messy into what your family is about. If
Mm-hmm.
that can be a really soothing and nurturing way to develop this work.
Mm, yeah, absolutely. I love that you brought that in. And also, let's remember, like, we don't need to have a savior complex about it either. Like, I know that if you're listening and tuning into this podcast, or you're like me and Kat, you're probably like, I want to go work in the trenches. I want to go, like, help break the curses of my lineage and reconcile all the problems. And it's okay to also just open yourself to receive the loving blessings and well wishings of your ancestors. Because remember that we are not only the manifest traumas and pains and choices of our lineages, but we are also the answered prayers of our ancestors. Like, imagine people 2 generations ago, 5 generations ago, 7 generations ago, like thinking about their children and thinking about, I want my children to have a good life and I want their children to have a good life. Like that is, in whatever way it expresses, like the current of love that flows in the rivers in all of our veins, is the loving prayers and well wishes of our ancestors. And even just tuning into, like, no, not everybody was perfect people. And, some people made really horrible choices, or, but I really do believe everyone is doing the best they could with what they had. in whatever way that manifested, and allowing yourself to tune into that generosity on behalf of your ancestors and allow yourself to receive and tune into the loving kindness and the well wishes that they had for their children and that they have for you as the children of as the child of their children. Like that's a very can be like it can be profoundly uncomfortable, honestly. Like I'm even just getting a little emotional right now thinking about that, of like opening yourself to receive the love of your ancestors is like very profound. But we don't need to go in and like with a battle cry to like right all the wrongs. It can also be a very healing practice to allow, allow yourself to receive that love and to allow your ancestors and to honor your ancestors as a loving, beneficial presence is very healing.
Mm, yeah. So let's just dip into some practices. Maybe can we talk just a little about the ancestor altar, just as a technology piece that we're working with, because
Do you
this
have
is
anything that you can show us? Because I know, Kat, you're so great about your ancestor altar. Like, is there
my
anything
ancestor altar
visible?
is downstairs.
Okay.
So
All right.
yeah, it's not in this room. It's not in this space. It's downstairs.
Okay.
But I actually just this week went and printed some photos of some ancestors for my altar. And some of them, I printed some ancestor photos, and I'm not putting them all on there yet because I don't know them that well. So I'm waiting to see, and I'm just doing one set of photos at a time to start to open up that gateway and start to have that communication with them.
Mhm.
But so we might have seen maybe from other traditions and cultures, you might have seen an ancestor altar with photos of those who have passed and objects, flowers, candles, things like that, and wondered, is that something you should do, or how do you do that? So Michelle, what kind of tips do you have for an ancestor altar?
Mm. Imagery is wonderful if you happen to have it, and if you don't, that's okay. The way that I make my ancestor altar, and I usually have mine seasonally just because I have a lot of altar activity in my house, and I'm putting them up and taking them down for different retreats. And so the ancestor altar is like, okay, it's for this portal. And so I have a couple of photos. I have one photo in particular that I really love. That's my grandmother as a young girl with her mother, my great grandmother, and her sister. And I never met any of these women, but it's one of my favorite photos that I have, um, because I feel the presence of my great grandmother very strongly. So she's an ancestor who I work with strongly. And so I put up the photo, and I know that my great grandmother, she worked in weaving cloth, and so she loved fine material. She was always about the quality material, and so she would rub the cloth and say, it's good material. So I have a very beautiful woven scarf in bright colors, and her favorite color was red, which I didn't know until I showed my mom the scarf that I put on, and she said, oh, that was her favorite color, was that color red. So I have a beautiful scarf out that I know she would like, and my grandmother loved butter, so I put like a big glob of butter on a little plate and a mug of coffee. And so, you can do food offerings, feasting offerings, drinks that they like, colors and textures, or if you have items of theirs, objects of theirs. I have a box from my other grandmother who I also put on or that I also put on the altar as well. It's a jewelry box. Um, and you can sing songs, light candles. It's a way of, and there are, there's other specifics according to other traditions of like the kinds of flowers that you have, like marigolds, are very commonly seen on altars to the beloved dead. Um, but yeah, making food offerings is very common. Cornmeal, the calaveras, the little candy skulls. That's a Day of the Dead tradition in Mexico. And so again, a lot of different ways of celebrating this across cultures, but I really tune into what did they like? What am I wanting to nourish them with? How would I like to celebrate them? How would I like um, to give them good energy and celebration and just spend some time connecting with them. So putting out things they like and foods they like and singing songs is usually how I work with an ancestor altar. How about you?
I have my ancestor altar up all the time. I actually just finished painting a shelf and setting it up with the ancestor altar. And some tips around it are not to put it in your bedroom because the ancestors can actually be noisier beings, spirits to work with. So they might keep you up at night. And it's said that it's not, it's not good. Thing to do to have your ancestors in while you're making love. Eh, this is
Or
not
sleeping?
where
Yeah.
they don't want to see your stuff.
Yeah.
So
Can
not in the bedroom.
can I interject a note here? This is good, like really excellent advice for any altar technology is having a working altar should not be in your bedroom. Like the kinds of
Yeah.
altars that you should have in your bedroom would be for a love altar or a health and well-being altar. And then anything that you're working with or have clients interfacing with or have as an anchor for really powerful spiritual forces should be somewhere else. That's just good advice in general.
Although I do have in my bedroom, I have my goddess altars, and I'm working with these. I am working with some specific beings in my bedroom, but
Okay.
they're also that's where they want to be, and I will work with those beings when I'm asleep at night, and I'm good with those beings.
Okay.
And
Okay, I guess that's an important
but
qualifier.
it can be like qualifier, I think definitely if there's an altar that is specifically you're working with a client, I wouldn't put that in my bedroom. I wouldn't put an ancestor altar in my bedroom. I wouldn't put something where I'm unused to or that might feel too noisy that it's going to keep me up at night.
Mhm.
So what if you live in a studio apartment? What are you going to do? Well, you can cover the altar at night with a nice cloth. You
Mhm.
can get or build a cabinet altar, which is very common in a lot of traditions where you open the doors and then your altar is set and you do your prayers and you light your candles. And when you're complete, you close the door. And
Mhm.
there's some really beautiful altars, or you could make something that would be gorgeous.
Or
And
even just
that
change the angle so it's offset and so it's not like you're not
it's not
looking directly at it from bed.
facing your bed.
Yeah.
Right. So there's some options there if you don't have any other choices. And sometimes it's hard as, believe me, I'm like an altar freak. So I have so many altars. Sometimes it's hard to figure out where does the altar go for this specific thing. Um, but for the ancestor altar, I would say another tip is to not put living people on your ancestor altar. So if you have a beautiful picture of you and your grandma, use the picture that's just grandma. Don't put the one with you still on it because that's just part of, you're being very specific in the container that you're holding for these ancestors. And like Michelle said, you might not have access to photos. You might not even know your ancestors. Maybe you were adopted. Maybe you are working with the more of the ancestors of your lineage and you have photos or drawings of lineage holders.
Mhm.
Or maybe you are working with your personal ancestors, but you don't have connection to them. But maybe you've done some testing and you know where they're coming from in the world. And you then can do some research and understand more about the people that came from that place. What were they doing? What was their daily life like? What was important and what was sacred to them? So I
Mhm.
always look at what are the sustenance foods. So
Mm.
I have a lot of people that come from the British Isles. So I will often offer oats because this is a sustenance food of my people.
Mm.
But when I'm working with the ancestors of the land where I'm at in New Mexico, I'm offering corn, I'm offering pinon, I'm offering what would be sustenance here. Maybe your ancestors were eating a lot of salted fish, dried fish, and so you offered jerky, and hopefully your dog doesn't eat it. And where your people were eating specific kinds of vegetables or specific kinds of fruits. Maybe your people come from a more tropical area where there was a lot of fruits. And
Mhm.
so these are the things when you start, or they were winemakers. You know, I have
Mhm.
winemakers in my lineage. Maybe they were beer makers. So beer might be an important offering. These are all things that
The
when you start to look out, what was important?
and the medicines of the land too. That's something that in I mentioned my Foundations of Shamanism course, and this is something we talk a lot about in the first module is about like how to engage with um, the the people and the lands that they walked because let's remember like our lineage is never just human people, it's the context that they lived in and the land and the mountains and the air they were breathing and the water they were drinking, the cat, as you mentioned, the sustenance foods, but also the relationships that they had with the animals and the plants and the earth where they lived. So and I want to mention something else there too, because you said, okay, well, maybe you're not working with like anyone you know personally. Like my client I mentioned who the relationships that this person had to their immediate family, they had no interest in working with their immediate ancestors. So it was a journey practice to go ask for an ancestral presence, a well ancestor who would come work with this client for the purpose of opening to ancestral healing and to do this work. You can do that too. You can either, if you have a journey practice, invite in and do a shamanic journey to invite in the presence of a well ancestor, or if you want to receive support from myself or from Kat or anybody else, that's something that you can do and to open the connection that way. And you may never have a visual representation, but or say for example, your people were Kat, you gave such a lot of really wonderful examples. Something that I've dove into is my own ancestry of the nomadic horse tribes who traveled across like the European steppe and my own relationship with horses and then all the prolific like gold jewelry that they made with all the animal symbolism, so you can dive into that too and put up like symbols of animals or if and I don't have a horsehide drum. I've thought like, man, I should get a horsehide drum. I need to make a horsehide drum, but a little horse on your altar, just whatever is honoring the context and the nourishment and the life of your people or the people that you're celebrating with, the land that you're celebrating. And, Kat, I love that you mentioned working with the ancestors, not only of your lineage, but also of the land where you live and our human and non-human ancestry.
And we also can can work in a very intuitive way. Sometimes we think, oh, it's got to make exactly sense. But it also is a very intuitive practice. So you can be asking, just making that request, even if you don't hear anything, even if you don't get a visual picture, all of that is fine. But if you're just making that intention known, hey, ancestors, well, beneficial ancestors, ancestors from this side of my family, ancestors from this side of my family. You can introduce yourself, say your name, say who your parents were, your grandparents, to say their name, say what your intention is in connecting. And that I would love to know what kinds of offerings might feel nourishing to you. And then follow your intuition that the next time you're at the store and you see some piece of fruit or some grain or some drink or something that you just feel like, oh, that feels like the right thing. Just use that in your home. Open up your cabinets and intuit what feels right. a lot of times when we're doing spiritual practices, especially when we're new with them, we get really caught up with whether we're doing it right or not. And
Mhm.
instead of doing it, we worry about it. And so, really, just do it. And then you'll refine and develop and flush it out over time. But you don't have to be perfect at these things. Nobody's expecting you to be perfect. And there's
Mhm.
no, you're not going to have a so your ancestor is going to curse you because you gave Reese's peanut butter cup instead of a Twix. That like that is the level of sometimes what we're thinking of the impact of what we're doing. It's like the choosing between two kind of inconsequential things in some way. Yes, intention, yes, meaning, yes, correspondence to what you're calling in. All of those things are really helpful. But if it's keeping you from doing the practice, that's an inhibitor. Just do the practice.
Mhm. Well said. Absolutely. And even just like spending time with, so we talked about making the altar, but then what do you do with the altar? Okay, well, you can light candles at the altar. I will usually, when I have my ancestor altar up, I'll put out, like I said, coffee and butter, and then I'll sit there and have breakfast with my ancestors, and I'll, tell them a story, or I'll kind of check in a couple few times a day, and I usually have some like my morning practice feels different from the night practice. So like in the morning, I'll sit and have coffee with my grandmother and my great grandmother, and have it be a little more visiting. And then in the evening, I'll light a candle and I'll drop in and sing. Is something I really enjoy doing with not only my ancestors but all of my altars. And they actually gifted me a song um, 3 years ago, I think, for Samhain. I had my ancestor altar up and I just started singing, and they gifted me a song with the bones. And this song, a total side note, I have been really leaning into my songwriting practice recently and receiving a lot of healing, very beautiful healing and ceremonial songs. And so I hopefully will be recording them like sometime by the end of this year or before the summer of next year, and actually releasing an album. And this song that my ancestors gifted me is one of them. And it's a very simple, beautiful song that, again, it's, whatever is coming through, and just spending time and being in appreciation, honoring, respect, knowing that when we connect with our ancestors, it's, again, I think people really lean really hard into the fixing stuff, but also just drawing strength from our lineages, and recognizing the long memory of our lineage, and knowing that when we're connected with our memory, we're connected with people, with land, with belonging, with relationship, with patterns. And I think in the world that we live in, that's very fast and very distractible, and we have like a shorter and shorter attention span, a shorter and shorter memory, it's very easy to feel disconnected, and rushing and urgency, and not enoughness and depletion. And connecting with our ancestors is part of the remedy for that, because we remember our own place in humanity. We remember our own belonging to Earth and to our people. And we get to take our seat of belonging in remembrance, and being in the memory. It's very important. Very good medicine.
Yeah,
Actually,
that's
can I
beautiful,
offer a
Michelle.
song? Not my song, but a song that's on that medicine?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, great. All right. This song, I don't know who wrote this song, but this is an ancestor song. We are remembering all of our ancestors. We are remembering all of our ancestors. Deep are the roots of the tree, long is our memory, great is our family, of love alive in me, of love alive in me. repeats.
Yay, and that's so pretty. Thanks,
Yeah.
Michelle.
You're welcome. I
I
learned
think
that
that's a
from.
good point because I think the ancestors, honestly, all the spirits love a song. Like if you can just sing a song to your ancestors, even if you don't know what kind of song that you're singing, uh, just speak to them. Just sit
Mm,
and talk as though the same as you would if you were at the kitchen table with your grandma right there and you
mhm,
were having that cup of coffee and you were just telling her about your life and your loves and your work and what you're passionate about, what you care about. Maybe your heart is hurting, like unburden yourself. So often, what I have heard from ancestors, from different people's ancestors, is we wish that you would unburden yourself. We wish
mm,
that you would give back what is truly ours. Stop holding on to our pain. Give it back to us and be free. We willingly take it from you, but you must offer it to us.
mm,
And that is this opportunity then in this relationship that we're having. There is a space where we can give our pain to just the same way if when you were a little kid, if you had a loving person in your life, a loving adult of any kind, that you could crawl up in their lap and you could cry and you could rest your little weary body and feel like you were unburdened of your pain and suffering because they were going to hold it for you. The ancestors are that space where we can be that so that we are not alone in the way that we think that we are. And this is just this gentle relationship building. It's just conversation. It's just
mhm.
communication.
Beautiful.
Something that I did is that my grandmother is sort of a what I would call a portal ancestor for me. So that I connect with her because I knew her in real life and I don't have a lot of connection to family. She's one of my only ancestor really that I had a deep loving connection to in real life. And so she's predominant in my altar. And when I go to connect to my ancestral work, I call her in first because she is going to always protect me. She is always going to have my best interest at heart, and she's always going to make sure that whatever kind of ancestral work that I'm doing, that she is there and she is helping me. And I know that she loved the Leaves of Grass. I knew that that was one of her favorite books, Walt Whitman, and this book of poems. And so
Mm.
I found this really beautiful leather-bound volume that's on the altar now. And I had a period where I would just sit and read little sections from it. And it not only was something that felt like, when I was a kid, she read to me, and it was this amazing, beautiful thing and beautiful offering she did for me. And now here I am able to bring something that was meaningful to her that she's now able to receive as an offering from me. And it doesn't have to do with I'm making all of these food offerings or all of these things, but it's this time, it's this intention, it's this being in a devoted relationship to what is meaningful.
Yeah. Mm. Oh, that's so lovely. All of that is such great advice. And for those of us who may not have close personal relationships with ancestors, I only ever met one of my grandparents, and she passed away when this my dad's mom. She passed away when I was like 6 or 7 years old. So and we didn't live in the same place, so I saw her, a couple of times a year, I think, until I was 6 or 7. Um, and so I actually don't have any close personal relationships with ancestors who I knew when they were still in their bodies. But I do still feel very strongly the presence of particularly my great grandmother, like I mentioned, on my other side, my mother's side. And And so you don't have to know them personally to have that connection. There, it is totally possible. And again, like Kat, you just offered such wonderful advice of like, follow your intuition, ask your ancestors what would be helpful to them or what they would like to receive, and know that it's we have to love our ancestors enough not to steal their karma. One of my teachers says that, and I think that's really great advice to be thinking about. Of we take so much responsibility, which is both a blessing and a burden. Like we take, of what is ours to actually take responsibility for is learning from the memory and learning from the experiences and moving forward in a good way, and asking forgiveness and offering forgiveness. But what is not our responsibility? It is not our responsibility to steal the karma of and the burdens of our ancestors. So I think if there is that balance too, and having enough respect for your lineage and for the souls who were incarnate in the experiences that they were incarnate in, and respect for the soul journey that they're on, to say, I love you and I support you. And I, for whatever healing and love that I can offer you here from this earthside experience, I'll hold that for you. And also, I support you in working out your karma. And I'll do my best through my right aligned actions here while I'm earthside to offer that as a benevolent presence to our lineage and to the earth. And I trust you to take responsibility for what is yours. So there's a balance in that too. Kat, you're muted.
Muted. I'm muted because I was blowing my nose because I have a head cold. So,
Well, thank
that's
you for being
beautiful,
here and sharing
Michelle.
your wonderful wisdom anyway. Like, I don't think anyone would know that you're not feeling your best based on just smartness.
Well, but my nose is very red, but
Mm.
that's okay. Um, I think these are all great places to start, and I really hope that this is inspiring some contemplation, some thoughts. I was even thinking, one of the things that I did, because I've lived in some really small places, is
Mhm.
that so on the cheap ancestor altar functionality if you live in a small place. You get a wooden crate that you can get at like the whatever hobby store, Michael's or whatever. You get the wooden crate, and then you build the ancestor altar inside the wooden crate, and then you can just take a cloth and you can put it over the crate
Mhm.
if it's just in your bedroom or whatever. And then it's like this small little self-contained thing that you could even move around and try it in different places. And I even took the wooden crate in one house and attached it to the wall. So it was like a shelf, but it was more contained so things wouldn't fall off, etc. So
Mhm.
that is one of my cheap altar suggestions, which might turn into a crazy altertopia of your home if you just like put them everywhere.
Uh-huh. Excellent. Um,
Yeah.
I know, Kat, you mentioned that you leave your ancestral altar up year round, and that's certainly an option. Like I
Mhm.
said, mine is seasonal. So the way in which you choose to engage with that is certainly up to you. We're recording this episode for the purpose of sharing it around Samhain, because this is the time of the veil being very thin. And here in the northern hemisphere, where the Samhain is the tomb portal, so we're entering into the working with the process of going into the earth and the other worldly realms and entering the shining realms of the inner earth. And so this is all very potent time of ancestral work. I often find that I'll leave my ancestor altar up, usually kind of like Samhain through almost solstice, and just spend some time with it until it feels like its work is complete for that season. And then I put it away. And then I'm actually due to get it out again here very shortly. So it's, yeah, you'll feel what's right for you.
Good. Thanks, Michelle.
Mhm.
So work with your ancestors. Don't be scared. You're gonna
Yep.
be okay. And Michelle, what do you
Oh wait,
have going on?
I have one
You have
other
one
thing
more?
to, I have one other thing to add. If you are feeling a little trepidatious, um, invite in a trusted guide to support you, a trusted familiar to help you engage with your ancestral work in a way that feels good to you. Kat, you mentioned that you work with your grandmother as a portal ancestor to help you. And so she is a trusted guide for you to help you connect with
Mhm.
others in your lineage. But if you don't have that, work with any of your other guides that you have a really great relationship with, of like, hey, Archangel Michael, or hey, Raven, please help me in opening to connect with a well ancestor in a good way. Kat, yes, please.
I also have my dog who passed on my ancestor altar. So my dog is also one of my guides. So even if you're just starting out and you're like, I'm not even sure who my guides are, that is another option, because I do believe that our animals who have passed are always there supporting us in spirit. So
Yeah.
but an animal guide is always helpful. And so you can put that animal guide image on your ancestor altar and just consider that that animal is there helping you, protecting you, taking care of you. And then, of course, like Michelle said, any of these other guides that you feel called to work with.
Absolutely. Okay. Good luck. Ready? Go get it. Awesome. I would love to just offer real quick. I've mentioned a couple times now the Foundations of Shamanism course that I have coming up starting November 17. Everything that we talked about in this episode would be supported by this course. So if you are looking to answer your shamanic calling or lean into your shamanic practice, if you want tools to safely and confidently navigate the unseen realms, support your energetic hygiene, support your work in connecting with ancestors and other spirit guides, and develop your earth-based ritual and ceremonial practice, then go check out the course, the Foundations of Shamanism course. It's on my website, michellehawk.com. And that starts November 17. And if you're looking for one-on-one support with healing or mentorship, I have spaces for that too.
Great. Thanks, Michelle.
Mhm.
My next program will be Heal Thyself starting November 22nd. And this is a self-healing activation where we meet live calls every week. And we will be using somatic, energetic, shamanic, spirit-led work, working with movement, breath, and sound. We do a lot of sound work in this program to activate that healer within and get the support to understand what are the healing technologies that you want to integrate into your daily practices and the things that are going to help you the most, and things that you can put in your toolbox for working with your clients. So that's the next one. And then there's lots after that. And if you are interested in work, just reach out at katherinebird.com.
Amazing. All right, y'all. Thank you so much. Please share this with anyone who you think needs help working with their ancestors. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.